This happened 2 years ago. A group of my friends and I wanted to all live with each other while we were doing remote learning at university. We go to a very popular school in California, and as a group of girls living together, we spent most nights watching movies, drinking wine, and hanging out all together. To give some context to the layout of our house, which I think is important to know, we lived in a massive house that was divided into 3 different apartments. We chose our apartment specifically because it was at the very back of the house, which made us all feel safer since we wouldn't have the normal riff-raff of being right on the street where anyone could easily see or decide to do anything sketchy. Not that we really thought it was an issue, but it made all 5 girls living in the house feel safer, especially since we were now all away from our families. In terms of inside, we have 4 bedrooms upstairs, and 1 bedroom right next to the open concept kitchen and living room. The ground floor bedroom faces our tiny parking lot and a tiny garden, while our kitchen and living room face a little sidewalk alleyway that runs along the side of the house and leads to our front door. So it was a pretty big apartment. The rooms were small, but the communal kitchen and living room were a great hangout spot. We hadn't furnished it properly yet and didn't have any curtains or blinds. The only thing that separates the window from the outside is a pretty flimsy bug screen. In the weeks leading up to the incident, my friend, who was the one living in the bedroom on the first floor, was complaining to the other 4 of us that if we wanted to bring anyone over, we needed to be at the door to grab them so that they don't jingle and try the locked door every time. Apparently, she would always hear footsteps right outside her window, which faced our little parking lot at the back of the house, and hear someone try to open the front door or try to open a window. Looking back on it now, I don't really understand how we weren't as freaked out when she told us this. I think we just had such a false sense of security since we had so many people in the house. We lived in the very back of the house, and we did have boys coming in and out of our house at night, so I guess it just wasn't unusual to hear footsteps. Or at least we just kept blaming each other's hookups for not following the rules of staying outside until we opened the door for them. Anyway, my friend's complaints died down and we all kind of forgot about any issue that happened. This was until the day that the incident happened, and it was honestly the scariest thing that has probably ever happened to me. All 5 of us, plus 2 boyfriends, were all sitting in the living room for a Harry Potter movie marathon. We have 3 couches that are all placed in a U-shaped configuration, and a shitty tiny TV we were able to buy at Best Buy. So it was a tight squeeze for all of us, but it felt so safe being around so many people, especially 2 huge guys. For some more pretext for our marathon, we all thought it would be kind of cute to make Harry Potter-themed treats. We made cupcakes and filled them with different colors for all the houses. One of my other friends made a sparkly cocktail, and we were just kind of having fun with it. We had all of our lights turned off because, as you know, the Harry Potter films are filmed with a lot of darkness, and with such a crappy TV, it was genuinely hard to see what was going on at some points. At this point, we were really enjoying the film, until one of my friends says to pause the TV. She said that she had been hearing some crunches and footsteps for the past 30 minutes. This was my bad entirely, but I told her to stop scaring all of us because we have the other 2 apartments in the house who occasionally walk by our front door after they have parked, so it wasn't anything to be scared about. We continue watching the movie, and suddenly we hear giggling. It was a short burst, and then dead silence. We were all dead silent. It was almost like we couldn't believe we heard something so close by. We literally turned off the TV at this point because it was just really unnerving. And then there it was again, whoever it was literally right outside of our door giggling. It didn't sound like a child's giggle. It was more like someone imitating a child's giggle, which really freaked us all out. We went to my bedroom window, which was above the front door, so that we could see if anyone was outside. As expected, no one was outside. No one was in the alleyway. So the boys decided they would just check outside our house and the parking lot and see if they could find anything. I think they were spooked too, but didn't want to admit it. The boys ended up coming back and said they couldn't find anything weird nor unusual, and it was probably just our next door neighbors, so we probably just heard some weird echo. Maybe it's the false sense of security, but we were pretty satisfied with that answer. If the boys weren't even that freaked out, why would we be? So we decided to turn the TV back on, make some more popcorn, and just chill. Once again, maybe it's just stupidity, or feeling like nobody could hurt us with such a big group, but we opened one of the kitchen windows for some air after one of my friends burnt the popcorn. The kitchen window we opened was on the very far end of the kitchen and was the furthest window away from us, so it felt better knowing that even if something were to happen, at least we had some distance. As it happened previously, we heard another giggle. This one sounded almost strangled, almost like it was really forced out. We looked towards the open window and saw nothing. One of the boys decided to shout, "Shut the fuck up," for some comic relief, I guess. I think it made us feel better to think that it was just the house next door's party. We unpaused the movie, and not even seconds after unpausing do we hear another giggle, and this time when we look over, we see some guy's face pressed against the fucking bug screen, while he continues to open and close his mouth as if he is trying to chomp down on the screen. His eyes were wide open and just staring at all of us as he kept chomping. Oh shit, it was chaos. Literally, survival instincts went straight out the window for some of us, because while the boys ran to the window and tried to shut and lock it, everyone else was screaming or running upstairs or locking themselves into bedrooms. This is the part that I cannot recount, since I ran upstairs. But according to the boys, after they were able to shut the window and grab one of our kitchen knives, the guy just continued to press his face against the window, making the same chomping motion while not blinking. And he stayed like that until he suddenly whipped his head back and literally disappeared into the darkness. We ended up calling the police to report this guy, but they point blank said that they wouldn't really do anything unless we got hurt, but that they would definitely file a report about it for any future issues that could be called in. That night we all decided to buy blinds for downstairs, and we called some of our dads to help us install proper locks on the front door and all of the bottom floor windows. I guess all in all, nothing bad happened, but it was definitely scary since we didn't actually know if his intentions were to come inside. It must have been more than a decade ago by now. I was a kid at the time that my dad had bought this quaint house on the outskirts of a little town. It was a decently sized home with a big backyard overlooking the marshes and unused farmers' fields. There were two entrances to the house, what people would call the main front door that led straight inside the house, but it was blocked off, and a side door that connected to the barn or entrance where the heater to the house would be located, which had another door leading into a hallway of the house. The house had a strange layout, but put into context how this fits into the story was because my bedroom at the time of living with my dad was situated at the back of the house facing the big backyard. I remember one night very vividly, some 10, 12 years later. I was sitting in my room doing digital artwork on my computer. It was something I loved to do as a teenager, and usually I'd listen to music with headphones on. The way I was sitting had me facing semi-away from the big window in my room, the largest in the house. I had my blackout blinds drawn, and it was the only room in the entire house that had the light on, and I'd assume from outside you'd see slivers of light through the edges of the folding blinds. I think it was between 2:30 and 3 a.m. I was peacefully minding my own business when I hear a massive slam on my window. It was a dull but loud thud, and what I thought was a shout. My dad was sleeping peacefully in the room next to me. How he didn't hear anything at the time still amazes me to this day. I remember just sitting there, shook, no clue what I just heard until it happened again. I heard it clear. Somebody was outside my window, in the backyard. Whoever this was had no reason to be there. I remember being too scared to open my blinds. Instead, I got up, just staring at the window, not taking my eyes off it. Something I'm thankful for to this day. was I went with my gut feeling. My gut was telling me to grab a flashlight and check the front door. This was an old house, so I would have to leave the comfort of the house to enter the barn to get to the main entrance of the house. I remember shining my light through the glass in the door. The window had the frosted film for privacy, but sure enough, I barely got the flashlight lifted 3-4 inches to the glass before seeing movement of whoever was out there. All I remember seeing was the reddish-orange color of the man's coat when the flashlight hit the frosted glass. As quick as he appeared, he was gone. The real kicker? Absolute terror set in when I realized the door hadn't been locked this entire time. I managed to lock it and run inside, and the first thing I grabbed was a bread knife. Not practical, but when your adrenaline and fear is coursing through your brain, it's the last thing you think of. I remember trying to wake up my dad, who was passed out like a drunk sailor, to see whoever was outside. We never found the man, and he never came back. Had I not locked that door, prank or not, I dread to think what would have happened to me. I've seen some shit in my life, but people will forever scare me. This story takes place around mid-2016, right in the heat of the whole killer clown trend. IDK, if trend is the right word there. A lot of people have stories from this time, and mine isn't as scary as others I have read, but I felt like sharing nonetheless. This was around fall break of 2016. My cousin and I were both in middle school, me in 8th, him in 7th, and I was staying over at his house one night during fall break. There were quite a few people in the house that night. Me, my cousin, his 10-year-old brother, his 3-year-old sister, 3-month-old baby brother, his dad, and his stepmom. Let me try and explain the layout of the house and yard. They lived in a rather large, double-wide trailer that they bought and had out on a flattened part of a hill. Their driveway is a rather steep gravel slope that connected to the road at the bottom of the hill. Behind the house up the hill was nothing but woods. The nearest house was just slightly down the hill to the left, closer to the road. That was our grandparents' house. With the layout set up, let me continue to the story. As I said, my cousin and I were the only ones still awake. We were watching TV, probably some shitty sitcom on Nick at Night or something. We kept hearing noises in the woods behind the house. We could see into the woods from the window in the living room where we were sitting, but we didn't pay much attention to it since it was kind of windy. Plus, my uncle had lots of motion lights outside the house. In the back, facing the woods, the side door close to the driveway on the opposite side of the house, and on the slightly elevated porch that overlooked the front yard and the road. So we weren't too worried about anyone or anything actually being outside, since anything out there would have triggered the lights. We had heard lots of stories and watched lots of YouTube videos about the whole killer clown thing, and to be honest, I didn't think it was real. I thought it was just prank videos. Something made up just to get clickbait views. Plus, we live in a small nothing town in northeast Tennessee, where everyone and their dog owned some sort of firearm. That included my uncle, a retired veteran. So we were never afraid of anyone dressing up as a clown trying to jump out for a quick scare and a funny video reaction. So we were sitting on the couch watching the TV show, the only light being the TV and the dim light above the kitchen sink that was only a few feet behind the couch. Suddenly, the back motion detector light came on. We did notice, but didn't think anything of it. The lights were set on 10-minute timers. If it detected one movement, it would stay on and would turn off after 10 minutes if no other movement was detected. After 10 minutes, they went back off, so we figured it was just an animal, which wasn't uncommon. After about 20 minutes, I went to the bathroom down the hall. I did my business and washed my hands. When I came back out, the motion light on the side of the house by the side door that entered into the laundry room came on and shone through the thin blinds that were on the door. I swore I heard what sounded like footsteps on the gravel outside. Then the latch by the window started rattling quickly, like someone was trying to open it. I ran into the living room and got back in my spot on the couch. Luckily, the blinds were shut, so whatever it was didn't see me. I knew my cousin heard the same thing I did because he was already up and halfway into his dad's room to wake him up. At that point, I saw the light from the front porch come on, so I got up to look out the window that looked out to the porch. By this point, my uncle had his pistol and flashlight and was out on the front porch looking for who or whatever it was. My cousin and I were behind him on the porch watching. He looked around with the flashlight when he saw it. There at the bottom of the hill, in the ditch by the road, was a clown. It was a crappy costume, one from probably Walmart or Spirit Halloween. It just looked at us and waved. My uncle fired a warning shot, and the clown ran across the road and into the woods. My cousin and I didn't sleep anymore that night. My uncle stayed out on the porch for a few more hours to make sure no one came back. I remember him telling us not long after the shot was fired, he heard what sounded like an ATV starting up and driving away. Troublesome kids were always, and still are, an issue in that area. There are houses somewhat close to each other, but far enough that you couldn't see them. The only house we could see was our grandparents' house. I don't doubt it was just a high school kid playing a prank, just trying to scare whoever it was in the house. Years later, after reading some more experiences with these clowns, of people's lives actually being threatened, it still scares me to think of what he would have tried to do if he was able to get in the house.